Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cool metal wall of the research station and took a deep breath. Outside the thick windows, stars twinkled in the endless black of space. She had been working on Harmony's Edge for 3 years now, studying alien biology and trying to build bridges between different species. It was not always easy work, but Elena believed in it with her whole heart. The station floated in neutral space, far from any planet or government. Representatives from dozens of different alien races came here to talk, trade, and sometimes argue. Elena loved the diversity. She had always been curious about how different life could be across the galaxy. Today was special. The Krillians were coming. Elena had never seen a Krillian in person before. They were one of the most powerful species in this part of the galaxy. Their empire stretched across hundreds of star systems. They were also known for being very proud and very dangerous. The Krillians believed their race was perfect and pure. They did not like mixing with other species. But something had changed. For the first time in 200 years, a Krillian delegation was coming to meet with human representatives. Nobody knew exactly why, but Elena hoped it meant peace was possible. "Dr. Vasquez, they're here," said Marcus, her research assistant. He pointed out the window where a sleek silver ship was approaching the docking bay. The ship was beautiful but looked deadly, like a sword cutting through space. Elena made her way to the main meeting hall. The human delegation was already there, dressed in their best uniforms. Admiral Chen, the lead negotiator, nodded to her as she entered. "Elena, glad you're here. We might need your expertise if there are any biological questions," he said quietly. The doors opened with a soft hiss. 3 Krillians walked in, and Elena had to stop herself from staring. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with silver blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Their faces were angular and sharp, with large eyes that glowed slightly. They moved with perfect grace like dancers. The lead Krillian spoke in a voice that sounded like music mixed with ice. "I am High Commander Zixith. We come to discuss impossibilities." Elena noticed something else. Behind the 3 adults, a smaller figure followed. It was clearly young, maybe the equivalent of a human teenager. But something was wrong. The young Krillian was struggling to walk, and its skin looked dull compared to the others. The negotiations began, but Elena found herself watching the young one. It sat quietly in the corner, but she could see it was getting worse. Its breathing became labored, and occasionally it would shake slightly. After an hour, the young Krillian collapsed. The adult Krillians immediately surrounded their fallen companion, speaking rapidly in their own language. Elena stepped forward without thinking. "I'm a doctor. I might be able to help," she said. High Commander Zixth turned to her with eyes that could have frozen fire. "No human will touch a Krillian. Our biology is pure. Yours is contaminated." Elena felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. "Your young one is dying. I can see the symptoms. It's some kind of genetic disorder affecting the nervous system. Without treatment, it will be dead within hours." "Better dead than touched by inferior hands," Zixith replied coldly. Elena looked at the young Krillian, who was now barely conscious. She had seen similar conditions before in other species. It was treatable, but time was running out. "Please," Elena said, looking directly at the High Commander. "I've studied dozens of alien biologies. I might be the only person on this station who knows how to help. Don't let pride kill your child." For a long moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the labored breathing of the young Krillian. Finally, one of the other adults, who Elena guessed was the parent, spoke in their musical language. Zixith responded angrily, but the parent kept talking. "Very well," Zixith said finally. "But if you harm the youngling or contaminate its purity, we will consider it an act of war." Elena nodded and knelt beside the young Krillian. Up close, she could see the problem more clearly. The nervous system was shutting down due to a genetic flaw that caused certain proteins to fold incorrectly. She had seen this exact condition in 3 other species. "I need to get it to my lab," Elena said. "I have the equipment there to synthesize the right treatment." The Krillians carried their youngling to Elena's laboratory. Elena worked quickly, running scans and analyzing the genetic structure. Just as she thought, it was a protein folding disorder. She had developed a treatment for this exact problem 2 years ago. "This is going to require genetic therapy," Elena explained as she prepared the injection. "I need to introduce corrected genetic sequences that will teach the body to make the right proteins." Zixith watched every move with suspicion. You are changing its genetic code? Only fixing what's broken, Elena said. Like repairing a machine. The genetic pattern will still be purely Krillian. Elena administered the treatment through a series of carefully calculated injections. The young Krillian's breathing began to steady almost immediately. Within an hour, its skin started to regain its shimmer. Within 3 hours, it was sitting up and talking. The parent rushed to embrace the youngling, speaking rapidly in Krillian. Elena could not understand the words, but the relief and joy were universal languages. You saved my offspring, the parent said to Elena in halting English. I am forever in your debt, Elena smiled. I'm just glad I could help. That's what doctors do. But High Commander Zixith did not look happy. If anything, the Krillian leader looked angrier than before. You have interfered with Krillian genetics. You have introduced foreign elements into our pure bloodline. I saved a life, Elena said, confused. The genetic changes are minimal and only correct existing flaws. Your youngling is still completely Krillian. Contaminated, Zixith said coldly. Our genetic purity is our greatest strength. Any outside interference is corruption, no matter the intention. Elena felt cold dread creeping up her spine. Are you saying you would rather have let the child die? A pure death is better than a contaminated life, Zixith replied. You humans do not understand. You mix with any species, accept any influence. You are weak because you lack purity. The parent Krillian tried to speak, but Zixith silenced them with a sharp gesture. The negotiations are over, Zixith announced. We return to our empire. This incident will be reported to the High Council. Elena watched in shock as the Krillians prepared to leave. The young one looked back at her with what might have been gratitude, but Zixith hurried it along. Admiral Chen put a hand on Elena's shoulder. You did the right thing, Doctor. Don't let their reaction make you doubt that. Elena nodded, but she felt uneasy. Something in Zixith's voice had sounded like a threat. She hoped saving one life would not cost many others. 3 days later, Elena was in her lab when the emergency alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed throughout the station as the evacuation order came over the speakers. Elena ran to the main command center, where Admiral Chen was staring at the tactical display with a pale face. What's happening? Elena asked. Chen turned to her with eyes full of sorrow and rage. The Krillians just broadcast a message across the galaxy. They executed you in effigy and declared war on humanity. They're claiming you tried to corrupt their genetic purity, and that humanity is a contamination that must be cleansed from the galaxy. Elena felt the world spin around her. But I saved their child. I know, Chen said quietly, and now they're going to make us all pay for your compassion. The news spread through human space like wildfire. Every communication network, every news station, every social media platform carried the same horrifying message. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the woman who had saved a Krillian child's life, had been executed by the Krillian Empire. Not just executed, but tortured publicly as an example to all humanity. The video was everywhere. Elena, strapped to some kind of device while Krillian officials read charges of genetic contamination and corruption of purity. Her last words, broadcast across the galaxy, were simple. I would do it again. Saving a child is never wrong. Then the High Commander himself had activated the device, and Dr. Elena Vasquez died screaming. On Earth, President Martinez sat in the emergency session of the Global Council, with tears streaming down her face. Around the table, the representatives of every human nation and colony looked like they had been hit by lightning. She was trying to save a child, whispered the representative from New Tokyo Colony. A child. General Harrison, the head of Human Military Command, stood up slowly. His face was stone, but his hands were shaking. Madam President, I request immediate authorization for Protocol 7. The room went silent. Protocol 7 was theoretical. It was the plan they hoped they would never need. The plan for total war. General, President Martinez said carefully, Protocol 7 hasn't been updated in 50 years. We don't even know if those resources still exist. They exist, Harrison said quietly. I've been monitoring them personally. Every hidden shipyard, every classified weapons program, every sleeper project. They're all still there waiting. President Martinez looked around the room. She saw the same expression on every face. Grief, rage, and something else. Something that reminded her why humans had survived every challenge their species had ever faced. The Krillians think we're weak, said the representative, from Mars. They think our compassion makes us soft. They killed a healer, added the representative, from the Centauri colonies, someone who devoted her life to helping others. President Martinez closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were hard as diamonds. General Harrison, you have authorization for Protocol 7. Full implementation. No restrictions, Harrison nodded once. Thank you, Madam President. It's time the galaxy learned what humans are really capable of. Across human space, things began to happen very quickly. On Luna, deep beneath the surface, massive doors opened for the first time in decades. Inside, automated systems hummed to life. Construction bays that had been dark for 50 years suddenly blazed with activity. The lunar shipyards had been humanity's secret project since the early days of space exploration. While they built small ships openly, they had been building something very different in the hidden chambers. Dr. James Park, the director of the Luna facility, watched as the first massive hull began to move on its construction cradle. The ship was 5 kilometers long and looked nothing like the peaceful exploration vessels humanity was known for. This was a warship designed with one purpose: to end conflicts quickly and completely. How many can we have ready in 2 weeks? Park asked his assistant. 37 of the heavy cruisers, maybe 40. The carriers will take longer, but we can have 12 ready within a month. Park nodded. For 50 years, humanity had been building a secret fleet while pretending to be peaceful explorers. Today, that deception ended. On Titan, the weapons research facility received similar orders. Dr. Sarah Chen walked through laboratories that the public had never seen. Projects that had been labeled theoretical physics were suddenly very practical. The quantum disruptors are ready for deployment, her lead scientist reported. We've been testing them on asteroids for decades. They can phase energy through any known shield technology. What about the gravitational weapons? Chen asked. Operational. We can turn any large asteroid or small moon into a kinetic weapon by manipulating local gravity fields. The Krillians won't know what hit them. Chen smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. Good. They wanted to see what human science could do. Now they'll learn. Similar scenes played out across dozens of hidden facilities. The antimatter production plant on Europa, the super soldier training program on Ganymede, the AI warfare center on Ceres. For generations, humanity had been preparing for the day someone would push them too far. That day had come. But it wasn't just the military awakening. Across human space, civilians were volunteering for combat duty in numbers that broke all records. Young people who had never held weapons were learning to fight. Engineers were converting civilian ships for military use. Scientists were creating new weapons technologies in their spare time. The Krillians had made a critical error. They thought human compassion was weakness. They didn't understand that humans were at their most dangerous when defending something they loved. Captain Lisa Reynolds stood on the bridge of the merchant vessel, peaceful trade, as her crew finished installing military-grade weapon systems. Like thousands of other civilian ships, her vessel was being converted for war. Captain, her engineer reported, we've got the plasma cannons online and the shield generators at full power. This old cargo hauler isn't pretty, but she'll fight. Reynolds nodded. Elena Vasquez was my friend. We went to academy together before she chose medicine, and I chose shipping. The Krillians killed her for saving a child. That's not something I can forgive. All across human space, similar conversations were happening. Elena had been more than just a doctor. She had been a symbol of humanity's best qualities. Her murder had awakened something primal in the human spirit. Admiral Chen, who had witnessed Elena's act of compassion firsthand, now stood in the command center of the largest military fleet humanity had ever assembled. Ships that the public had never seen filled the space around him. Weapons that had been theoretical yesterday were being loaded onto combat vessels today. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different species. They're offering to mediate between us and the Krillians. Chen's expression didn't change. Tell them this is not a conflict that can be mediated. The Krillians executed a healer who saved their child. There can be no negotiation for that crime. Sir, the Krillian Empire is asking for a temporary ceasefire to discuss terms. Tell them, Chen said coldly, that humans don't negotiate with those who murder healers. They wanted to see what happens when humanity is pushed beyond its limits. Now they're going to learn. The officer hesitated. Sir, they're claiming they didn't know Elena was considered a non-combatant under human law. Chen turned to look at him directly. Every species in the galaxy knows that humans consider healers sacred. The Krillians knew exactly what they were doing. They thought our compassion made us weak. They're about to discover their mistake. Across the fleet, similar conversations were taking place. Humanity was waking up from decades of peaceful exploration and research. The sleeping giant was opening its eyes, and it was very, very angry. The first human war fleets began moving toward Krillian space within a week of Elena's execution. Ships that moved faster than anything the galaxy had seen before. Weapons that could punch through shields that had protected the Krillian Empire for centuries. Soldiers who fought with a combination of advanced technology and righteous fury that made them nearly unstoppable. The galaxy watched in shock as humanity revealed what they had really been doing for the past 50 years. While other species had been fighting each other, humans had been quietly preparing for the day someone would cross the one line that could never be crossed. They had killed a healer. Now they would learn why that was the worst mistake anyone could make. The first human fleet arrived at the Krillian border world of Zixtal on a Tuesday morning local time. The planet's defense force was ready for them. The Krillians had spent centuries building their military strength. Their ships were fast, their shields were strong, and their weapons could destroy entire cities in minutes. They were not ready for what humanity brought to the fight. Commander. Velth stood on the bridge of the Krillian flagship Purity's Blade and watched the human ships approach. There were only 30 of them compared to his 200 vessels. He almost felt sorry for the humans. They were about to learn why the Krillian Empire had dominated this part of the galaxy for so long. Open fire when they reach weapons range, Velth ordered. Make it quick. I want to be back home for evening meal. The human ships came closer. Velth raised his hand to give the attack order. Then something impossible happened. The human ships vanished. Where did they go? Velth demanded. Ships don't just disappear. His weapons officer was frantically checking his instruments. Sir, I'm not reading them on any sensor. It's like they stopped existing. Then the first Krillian ship exploded. The humans had not vanished. They had done something much worse. They had phased out of normal space-time, moving through dimensions that Krillian science didn't even know existed. They were firing weapons that passed right through shields as if the defensive barriers weren't there. Return fire, Velth shouted. All ships return fire. But how do you shoot at something you can't see? The Krillian ships fired blindly into empty space while their vessels exploded around them one by one. The human ships would phase back into normal space just long enough to fire, then disappear again before the Krillians could target them. In 10 minutes, Commander Velth's fleet was destroyed. 200 of the most advanced warships in Krillian space had been reduced to floating debris. Not a single human ship had been damaged. The news reached the Krillian High Command within hours. High Commander Zixith, the one who had ordered Elena's execution, stared at the reports in disbelief. This is impossible, he said. No species has technology like this. Where have the humans been hiding these capabilities? His intelligence officer, a younger Krillian named Kylan, spoke carefully. Sir, we may have underestimated human development. Our spies report that they've been building secret facilities for decades. What we thought was peaceful research may have been weapons development. Zixith slammed his fist on the table. Humans are weak. They waste their time helping other species instead of making themselves strong. They couldn't possibly have created weapons superior to ours. Sir, Kylan said quietly, they just destroyed our entire border fleet without taking a single casualty. On the human flagship Elena's Mercy, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The first engagement had gone exactly as planned. 50 years of secret weapons development was paying off. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we're receiving communications from 12 different Krillian worlds. They're asking for terms of surrender. Chen's expression didn't change. Tell them we're not interested in surrender. We're interested in justice. Sir, the Krillian High Command is requesting a meeting to discuss. No meetings, Chen interrupted. They had their chance for diplomacy when they chose to execute. Dr. Vasquez. Now they get to experience what happens when humans stop being civilized. The next phase of the human assault began 3 days later. Where the first attack had shown advanced technology, the second showed something even more terrifying. Human tactical brilliance combined with righteous anger. The Krillian fortress world of Kethmar had never been successfully attacked. The planet was surrounded by defense platforms protected by energy barriers and defended by the elite Krillian Guard. The military academies used it as an example of perfect defensive positioning. Captain Maria Santos led the human assault on Kethmar with just 5 ships. The Krillians had 300 vessels defending the system and enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Santos didn't attack the defenses. Instead, she targeted the moons. Using humanity's new gravitational manipulation technology, Santos turned the system's largest moon into a kinetic weapon. The Krillians watched in horror as their own moon began moving toward their planet, accelerated by human gravity generators. "Stop this madness," the Krillian commander broadcast. "You'll destroy the entire system." Santos replied with a voice cold as space itself. "Elena Vasquez was trying to save a child when you executed her. If you wanted mercy, you shouldn't have killed someone whose life was dedicated to helping others." The Krillians tried to stop the moon with their most powerful weapons, but human shields protected it from damage. They tried to evacuate the planet, but human ships blocked the escape routes. Finally, they tried to surrender. "Too late," Santos said simply. The moon struck Kethmar with the force of 1,000 nuclear weapons. The fortress world, symbol of Krillian military might, was reduced to a shattered ruin. The defense fleet was destroyed by the debris. 5 ships had eliminated an entire star system in less than 4 hours. The psychological effect was immediate and devastating. Across Krillian space, military commanders began to panic. If humans could destroy their strongest fortress with such ease, nowhere was safe. But the humans weren't finished demonstrating their capabilities. The third attack showed that their soldiers were as dangerous as their technology. The Krillian Military Academy on Veltra was considered the finest in the galaxy. The elite students there were trained to be perfect warriors, genetically enhanced and conditioned for combat. When human Marines landed on the planet, the Academy's defenders were confident they could handle a few dozen primitive soldiers. Sergeant David Kim led the assault team that captured the Academy. His squad of 12 Marines faced 3,000 Krillian elite guards. On paper, it should have been a massacre. It was. Just not the way the Krillians expected. The human Marines moved like ghosts through the Academy's corridors. Their armor made them nearly invisible. Their weapons fired projectiles that could punch through Krillian battlesuits like paper. Most importantly, they fought with a fury that the genetically perfect Krillians couldn't match. "They're not fighting like soldiers," one surviving Krillian guard reported later. "They're fighting like avenging angels. Every shot is personal. Every movement is driven by rage." In 3 hours, 12 human Marines had captured a facility defended by 3,000 elite guards. The Krillian casualties were total. The human casualties were 0. The reports reached other alien species within days. The Zephyrians, who had been planning their own war against humanity, quietly shelved those plans. The Korthan Empire, which had been considering an alliance with the Krillians, suddenly discovered urgent business elsewhere in the galaxy. The Velnari Confederacy sent an emergency message to the human government. "We wish to reaffirm our friendship with humanity and condemn the Krillian Empire's unprovoked attack on your healer." Similar messages poured in from dozens of species. Everyone wanted to make sure humans knew they had nothing to do with Elena's execution. On the Krillian homeworld, High Commander Zixith sat in an emergency meeting with his top advisors. The reports kept getting worse. Human fleets were moving through Krillian space like a scythe through grain. Worlds that had stood for centuries were falling in hours. How is this possible? Zixith asked for the 100th time. Where did they get such power? His science advisor, an elderly Krillian named Morden, spoke slowly. "Sir, I've been analyzing the human technology. It's not new. Some of these weapon systems appear to be decades old. They've been building this military force for generations while pretending to be peaceful explorers. Impossible. Our spies would have detected such a massive program." Morden shook his head. "No, sir. They hid it perfectly. While we were watching their merchant ships and research vessels, they were building warships in secret facilities. While we were laughing at their compassion for other species, they were developing weapons we can't match." Zixith felt a cold fear growing in his chest. "How long have they been planning this?" "I don't think they were planning a war at all, sir. I think they were planning for the day someone would push them too far. They built all this power and hoped they'd never have to use it. Then why are they using it now? Morden looked directly at his commander. Because we killed one of their healers, sir. We crossed the one line they could never forgive. Zixth realized far too late that the Krillian Empire had made the worst mistake in its history. They had mistaken human kindness for weakness. They had confused compassion with cowardice. Now they were learning the difference between a species that chose to be peaceful and a species that was incapable of violence. Humans had been the first kind. The Krillians had just discovered what happened when you forced them to become the second. 3 weeks after the first human attack, the Krillian Empire was in ruins. 50 worlds had fallen. Their most powerful fleets had been destroyed. Their legendary fortresses had been reduced to rubble. And still the human war machine pushed deeper into Krillian space with unstoppable force. High Commander Zixith stood in what remained of his command center on the Krillian homeworld of Krilla Prime. Half the building had been destroyed by human orbital bombardment 2 days ago. The other half would probably be gone by tomorrow. Sir, his communications officer reported with a shaking voice, the 4th Defense Fleet has been eliminated. Admiral Keithan's flagship was destroyed with all hands. Zixth closed his eyes. The 4th Defense Fleet had been their best. 200 ships commanded by their finest officers. Against 30 human vessels, they had lasted exactly 14 minutes. How many ships do we have left? Zixith asked. Across the entire empire? Maybe 300 functional warships, sir. Most of our shipyards have been destroyed. 300 ships. 3 months ago, the Krillian Empire had commanded over 10,000 warships. The humans had reduced their mighty fleet to a handful of survivors in less than a month. Sir, another officer spoke up hesitantly. We're receiving reports from our intelligence networks. The humans. They're not just destroying our military, they're doing something else. Zixth looked up. What do you mean? They're taking our territory, but they're not claiming it for themselves. They're establishing what they call humanitarian zones. They're setting up medical facilities and food distribution centers. They're treating our civilians better than we ever did. Zixith felt his world shifting beneath his feet. That's impossible. Conquerors don't help the people they defeat. These ones do, sir. On Veltra, they've built the largest hospital in the sector. On Zixtal, they're distributing medicine to cure diseases our own government ignored. The civilian populations are actually supporting them. The truth was even worse than his officer described. Across former Krillian territory, humans were implementing something they called the Elena Protocols. Every world they captured became a center for medical research and humanitarian aid. The humans were turning Krillian space into a vast network of healing centers. Dr. James Mitchell stood in the newly constructed hospital on Kethmar, the former fortress world. Where once there had been weapons and military training, now there were medical facilities and research laboratories. The irony was not lost on him. Doctor, his assistant said, we've got the first group of Krillian medical students arriving for training. Mitchell nodded. Good. Elena always said that healing should be a universal language. Maybe if we train their people in proper medical ethics, we can prevent something like this from happening again. The assistant hesitated. Sir, some of the human staff are uncomfortable working with Krillians. After what they did to Dr. Vasquez. Mitchell's expression hardened. Elena died because she believed in helping anyone who needed it, regardless of species. If we let hatred stop us from healing, then her death meant nothing. We'll honor her memory by doing exactly what she would have done. Back on Krilla Prime, Zixith was meeting with what remained of his government. The other high commanders looked as defeated as he felt. We have to surrender, said High Commander Velnari. Our empire is gone, our fleets are destroyed, our people are actually happier under human occupation than they were under our rule. We cannot surrender, Zixith replied. Our pride, our purity, our pride is what got us into this mess, Velnari interrupted. We killed a healer because our pride couldn't accept that she saved one of our children. Look what it cost us. High Commander Morketh spoke up from across the table. The humans aren't interested in surrender anyway. I've been monitoring their communications. They're not trying to conquer us, they're trying to completely reshape this part of the galaxy. Zixith frowned. What do you mean? They're building something new. Every world they take becomes a center for medical research, education, and humanitarian aid. They're creating a network of healing that spans dozens of star systems. They're making Elena Vasquez's work the foundation of a new galactic order. Impossible. No species builds an empire based on healing. Morketh pulled up a holographic display showing human activities across former Krillian space. See for yourself. They've established universities on 15 worlds, medical research centers on 23, food distribution networks that reach every inhabited planet. They're not building an empire. They're building a civilization. Zixith stared at the display in disbelief. But their military power is being used to protect healers and researchers, Morketh finished. They've created the most powerful military force in the galaxy, and they're using it to guard hospitals and schools. The reality of human strategy was becoming clear. For decades, they had built overwhelming military power while publicly focusing on peaceful research and exploration. When someone finally pushed them too far, they revealed their true strength. But instead of using that strength to dominate, they were using it to heal. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the human Admiral Chen. He's requesting permission to land on Krilla Prime." Zixith almost laughed. He's requesting permission? He could destroy this entire planet with a thought. Why is he asking? "Perhaps," Velnari said quietly, "because that's who humans really are. Even when they're at war, they try to be civilized." An hour later, Admiral Chen stood in the ruined command center with a small escort of human Marines. Zixith had expected him to be triumphant, arrogant, victorious. Instead, Chen looked tired and sad. "High Commander," Chen said formally, "I'm here to discuss the future of your people." "You mean our surrender?" Zixith replied bitterly. "No," Chen said, surprising him. "I mean your transformation. Your empire is gone. Your military is destroyed. But your people don't have to suffer for your mistakes." Chen activated a holographic display showing human plans for Krillian space. "We are offering your people a choice. They can join our humanitarian network as equals. They can learn new ways of thinking about medicine, science, and cooperation between species. Or they can be relocated to worlds outside human space where they can rebuild their own society." Zixith stared at the display. "You're not going to execute us, enslave us." "Elena Vasquez died trying to save a Krillian child," Chen said simply. "If we respond to her murder with more killing, we dishonor her memory. She believed in healing, not revenge. But you destroyed our entire empire." Chen's expression hardened slightly. "Yes, because some things cannot be tolerated. The murder of healers is one of them. But now that you can no longer threaten innocence, we're offering you the chance to become something better." Velnari stepped forward. "What about him?" She pointed at Zixith. "He gave the order to execute your doctor." Chen looked directly at Zixith. "He'll stand trial for war crimes, but even he will receive a fair hearing and proper medical care if needed." That's what Elena would have wanted. Zixith felt something break inside him. The humans had every right to execute him immediately. Instead, they were offering him justice according to their own laws. The same laws that had made Elena Vasquez risk her life to save a Krillian child. "I don't understand," Zixith said. "We killed your healer. We started this war. Why are you showing us mercy?" Chen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of all human history. "Because Elena Vasquez spent her life proving that compassion is stronger than hatred. If we abandon that lesson now, then everything she died for becomes meaningless. Your people will never accept Krillians as equals. We're too different." Elena thought different species could work together. Chen replied. "She died believing that. We're going to make her dream real, even if it takes generations." Chen turned to leave, then paused. "High Commander, you made the worst mistake anyone could make. You mistook human kindness for weakness. You confused our choice to be peaceful with an inability to fight. You learned too late that the most dangerous species in the galaxy are the ones who could destroy you, but choose not to. Until you cross the one line, They can never forgive. As Chen walked away, Zixith finally understood what had happened. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Krillian Empire. They had revealed themselves to be something the galaxy had never seen before. A species with the power to conquer everyone but the wisdom to choose healing instead. And they had used that incredible combination of strength and compassion to make Elena Vasquez's sacrifice the foundation of a new age. 5 years after the war ended, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Where the Krillian Empire once spread fear and oppression, a new network of healing and learning now connected dozens of worlds. The transformation was so complete that many species struggled to remember what the old order had been like. Dr. Sarah Kim stood on the observation deck of Harmony Medical Station, the largest hospital complex in the galaxy. The station orbited the former Krillian homeworld of Krilla Prime, now renamed Elena Prime in honor of the woman whose death had changed everything. Dr. Kim, her assistant, called. "The morning status report is ready." Sarah reviewed the numbers with satisfaction. In the past month, the station had treated patients from 47 different species. The medical college had graduated its first class of multi-species doctors. The research division had developed cures for 3 diseases that had plagued the galaxy for centuries, but the most remarkable change was in the Krillians themselves. Kylath had been a young Krillian officer during the war. She had watched her empire fall and her people's pride crumble. Now she worked as head of pediatric medicine at Harmony Station, specializing in treating children from species that the old Krillian Empire would have considered inferior. "Dr. Kim," Kylath said as she approached, "we've got the final results from the genetic therapy trials. The treatment Dr. Vasquez developed is working perfectly across 17 different species. We've essentially eliminated hereditary neural disorders in this sector." Sarah smiled. Elena would be proud. Her work is helping children across the galaxy. "More than that," Kylath replied. "She changed how we think about medicine entirely. The old Krillian way was to let the weak die to preserve genetic purity. Now we understand that every life saved makes all of us stronger." It hadn't been an easy transformation. In the first year after the war, many Krillians had struggled with their new reality. Some had tried to maintain their old beliefs about genetic purity and racial superiority. Others had fallen into despair at the collapse of everything they had believed in. But the humans had been patient. Instead of forcing change, they had offered it. Education instead of indoctrination, opportunity instead of oppression, choice instead of commands. Former High Commander Zixith sat in his small apartment on Elena Prime, reading reports about the trial that had determined his fate. He had been convicted of war crimes and sentenced to life in prison. But this was a human prison, which meant it focused on rehabilitation rather than punishment. "Zixith," the guard called. "Time for your medical ethics class." Zixith nodded and followed the guard down the corridor. The irony was not lost on him. He was spending his remaining years learning about the principles that Elena Vasquez had died defending, the same principles he had once considered weakness. His instructor was Dr. Martinez, a human physician who had volunteered to teach ethics to war criminals. She never showed anger or judgment, only patience and genuine concern for her students' understanding. "Today we're discussing the fundamental principle of medical neutrality," Dr. Martinez said to the small class of former Krillian officials. "Can anyone explain why healers are considered sacred in human culture?" Zixith raised his hand, something that would have been unthinkable in the old days. "Because healing transcends politics, nationality, and species. A healer's duty is to preserve life regardless of who needs help." Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly. "Exactly. And why is that principle worth protecting with overwhelming force?" "Because," Zixith said slowly, "without healers, civilizations become nothing more than efficient killing machines." Elena Vasquez represented the possibility that different species could help each other, instead of destroying each other. And what did her execution tell the galaxy about Krillian values? Zixith was quiet for a long moment. That we valued our pride more than life itself. That we preferred death to the possibility of being helped by those we considered inferior. After class, Zixith returned to his apartment and wrote in his journal, as he did every day, Day 1847 of imprisonment. Today I finally understood what Elena Vasquez was really offering when she saved our child. Not just medical treatment, but proof that cooperation between species was possible. I rejected that gift and ordered her death. In doing so, I doomed my people to learn compassion through defeat, rather than through choice. If I could change the past, I would kneel before that human healer and beg her forgiveness. Instead, I can only try to honor her memory by learning the lessons she died trying to teach. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species were taking note of what had happened to the Krillian Empire. The message was clear: harm human healers at your own risk. But the deeper lesson was more complex and more powerful. Ambassador Velton of the Zephyrian Republic stood before the Galactic Council and delivered a speech that would be remembered for generations. The human response to Elena Vasquez's murder taught us something profound about power. We always assumed that the strongest species would dominate the galaxy through force. The humans showed us something different. True strength comes from having the power to destroy your enemies, but choosing instead to heal the galaxy. The Elena Protocols, as they had come to be known, were spreading far beyond former Krillian space. Dozens of species had requested human help in establishing medical colleges and humanitarian aid networks. The galaxy was becoming a more peaceful place, not through conquest but through healing. On the 5th anniversary of Elena's death, a ceremony was held at the memorial statue erected in her honor. The statue stood in the center of Elena Prime's capital city, showing her kneeling beside a Krillian child, her hands glowing with healing energy. Admiral Chen, now promoted to head of Galactic Humanitarian Operations, gave the memorial address to representatives from over 100 species. 5 years ago, Dr. Elena Vasquez made a choice that changed the galaxy. When faced with a dying child, she chose compassion over prejudice, healing over politics, life over death. The Krillian Empire punished her for that choice, and in doing so, they forced humanity to show the galaxy what we're really capable of. But Elena's true victory wasn't in the war that followed her death. Her victory is in this moment, right here, where former enemies work together to heal the galaxy's wounds, where Krillian doctors treat human patients, where children from a dozen species learn together in the same schools, where the idea of genetic purity has been replaced by the understanding that diversity makes us all stronger. Chen gestured to the mixed crowd of humans, Krillians, and other species. Elena believed that compassion could bridge any gap between species. Today we live in the galaxy she dreamed of. A galaxy where healers are protected not just by law, but by the absolute commitment that anyone who harms them will face the full force of human power. Some have called the Elena Protocols naive idealism. They say that cooperation between species is impossible, that conflict is inevitable. To them I say, look around you. See former Krillian soldiers working as nurses in human hospitals. See human children playing with Krillian younglings in integrated schools. See the impossible made real through the simple recognition that every life has value. Elena Vasquez died to save one child. In response, humanity saved an entire galaxy. That is her legacy, and it will endure as long as there are healers willing to risk everything for those in need. As the ceremony ended, a small group gathered around the statue's base. Kylath, the former Krillian officer now turned pediatric specialist, placed a flower at the statue's feet. Beside her stood Dr. Sarah Kim and several other human doctors. Do you think she knew? Kylath asked quietly. When she chose to save my cousin's child, do you think she knew what would follow? Dr. Kim considered the question. I think Elena knew that some choices are worth any cost. She couldn't have known about the war or the transformation that followed. But she knew that every life saved makes the galaxy a little better. The humans could have chosen revenge, Kylath said. After what we did to her, you had every right to destroy us completely. Elena wouldn't have wanted that, Dr. Kim replied. She believed that healing was always better than harming, even when harm would be justified. As they walked away from the memorial, neither woman noticed the inscription carved into the statue's base. Written in the languages of every species in the galaxy, here stands Elena Vasquez, who proved that the greatest strength is knowing when not to use it, and that the greatest victory is turning enemies into healers. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not their hidden fleets or their advanced technology. It was their stubborn refusal to let cruelty have the final word. They had shown that compassion, properly protected, could indeed change the universe, and in medical colleges across hundreds of worlds, students of every species learned the first rule of the Elena Protocols. Heal first, ask questions later, and trust that good intentions will be protected by those who understand that healers are the most valuable treasures any civilization can possess. The galaxy was not perfect, There were still conflicts, still suffering, still those who chose hatred over hope. But now there was also something that had never existed before. A network of healing that spanned the stars, protected by the absolute commitment that those who devoted their lives to saving others would never again